there are our first 4 freehand, 15 yards, 3 of which are touching. I like that. Now, if you haven't heard enough about this already, you will have by the time we get done here. 5-inch Smith Wesson M&P 2.0 metal HD. This is the steel frame. It's a very divisive topic. I know Charlie Cox just made a video and said that the factory barrel was really inaccurate. Everybody, says, well, the stock trigger is better than some, I guess, but it still kind of sucks. You have to buy an Apex. We'll get to the bottom of that today. Let's see what happens. First shots, right out of the box. We've got our 507 comp on here. We'll basically get a 0 set, and then we will see how it stacks up. All right, so here we've got our mechanical accuracy testing apparatus. So what we'll do is we will fire 18 rounds with our Blazer brass 124 grain and see how accurate this barrel really is to the best of our ability here. I mean, I even felt myself throw a couple of those, and they were 1.5 inches low. That's not too shabby in my book. Got 46 rounds. I was a naughty boy. I threw a couple of them out there. It's really these 2 guys right here and this guy that I'm not super nuts about. But those are all still Charlie zone, so not great, especially for that predictive work, like 10 yards, but that's what we're after, right? We do this stuff so that we can make sure we don't throw these naughty boys and girls out. Because the reality is I am not the best shooter. I'd like to say I am, but I'm not. I'd like to be the best shooter. I'm trying to work to be as good as I can be. So that's work we put in so we can stop throwing rounds like that. I put in the work to be the best shooter that I can be. And that's part of the journey, right? We're never going to be perfect. We're going to throw some rounds. We're going to do some stuff that we don't want to do. But that is the journey. Getting better every single day. So these are Arredondo base plates on cheap Pro Mags. Pro Mag followers, Arredondo springs and base pads. I figured I'd experiment with it, see if I could replicate a nice high cap competition style magazine without spending $50 a piece on penning bases and without having to buy $45 a piece OEM mags. So I do have 3 OEM mags that I haven't stuck anything onto yet, but then I've got 2 of these right now to play with that I'll keep using for training, and we'll kind of see how they stack up. But other thing I've heard is that Smith & Wesson building these guns to have loaded chamber indicators and be California compliant, whatever. Part of that loaded chamber indicator is that there's an open port here at the breech, and it's going to throw all that gas right up into your window, right? Now, I just shot 46 rounds out of these guys and 51 from the loaded OEMs when we were doing 0 stuff. So I just cleared almost 100 rounds. I haven't wiped anything off the window at all whatsoever, and it is clean. All right, there's our window. Looks pretty damn good to me. I am not seeing gas or any of that junk on there. So, are the factory M&P 2.0 barrels inaccurate? I would say that mine, at least from the example we saw, has far more mechanical accuracy than I have practical accuracy. By which I mean, when I shoot it freehand, the gun is going to do more of its part than I'm able to do my part. If I can shoot a group like that freehand, I will be a very, very, very happy man. Now granted, this is a small sample size, and these are my first impressions. Those 100 rounds are not going to tell the whole story of the gun, right? But I took it out of the box, I didn't even lubricate the gun, I was able to get it zeroed, shoot it rested for all 18 of those rounds right in the box, other than, like I said, I felt myself actually push two, despite the fact that I was using our little rig, right? Even the rounds that I felt myself throw inexplicably with the bipod, I mean, come on, that's an ingenious rig. But even those ones were not at all what I would call inaccurate, right? That's me as the shooter being naughty. I think the gun's accuracy is absolutely fine. Does the LCI throw a bunch of oil and junk into the window? Not from what I saw. Again, it's only 100 rounds, but if it was an issue, I would expect it to have made itself very quickly apparent. If I shoot 5,000 rounds, the gun's going to get dirty and have carbon and stuff on it anyway. And that's not going to be because of the loaded chamber indicator. That's just a fact of life. So, we shall see. I guess maybe if I just get it soaking wet and just start tossing rounds around with really like light viscosity oil sitting right there in the breech, maybe? I don't know. We'll see, but I don't tend to do that with my guns anyway. I prefer to put on like some thicker grease on the rails and let it last a little bit. I don't want shit getting flung in I don't want shit seeping down the mag well and out of my pants or whatever anyway, so I don't know. And part of the argument I've seen is that it's a quality control issue, that Smith Wesson has just been really inconsistent, and if that's the case, then, you know, fair play. I can't argue that. I have a sample size of one gun that we just shot 100 rounds with. That doesn't really tell a story whatsoever. But, again, the more important thing is, do I trust the gun? My initial impression with the first rounds out of the new one is that it's fine. So, what can I say? The CSX is the more interesting story to me. It's a gun that I've always been really intrigued by, and then when they came out with this E Series that was optic compatible, I thought, man, I got to pull the trigger on that. So it's a single action only, double stack 9mm. Think like the SIG 238, same kind of principle, right? Where it's basically a little 2011, right? Or a little 1911, whatever you want to call it. And I think Smith Wesson does a really good job with things like the Shield line and this, where their subcompact guns have like extended mags available, bodyguard, same thing, where they have like grip fillers, and so when you stick a big long mag in there, it actually fills really well and it feels like you're utilizing, you know, a compact or a full-size grip. it's pretty intuitive and it feels natural, which I like. Having 17 rounds on hand, you're basically carrying, you know, a full-size mag as your spare, if you want to do it that way. And the gun comes with the flush fit 10-rounder, a minor extended 12-rounder, 13-rounder, something like that, and then the 17. So you've got quite a few options. I just keep the little flush fit 10-rounder on me because I can throw it in my gym fanny if I want to, or if I'm not wearing a belt, just kind of throwing shorts on or whatever. Works really well for that. And then when I am wearing pants, you can carry the 17-rounder as a spare, then throw in your intermediate on the gun, and it'll still conceal better than your Glock 19 or whatever fare. We kind of keep going back and forth and trying to reinvent the wheel, and subcompacts have definitely gotten a lot more popular. You know, the 365, which is in and of itself kind of this modular build, but 365s, Glock 43s, shields, that kind of thing have gotten really, really popular. I found that my 43X was not super pleasant to shoot. It wasn't bad. I mean, it's still only 9mm, but it was snappy enough that it wasn't great. The longer slide and the better recoil impulse of the 48, I think, is more appealing, because that is basically the barrel length and footprint of a Glock 19, only in a single stack, right? Smith Wesson with the Shield X now is basically offering you an M&P 2.0 4-inch in single stack, same idea. And this is interesting because you can get it in a 3.6 or a 3.1. This is the 3.1. But because it is a metal frame, and Smith & Wesson did some pretty slick engineering, it is not a snappy gun. It's pretty comfortable to shoot in terms of recoil impulse. However, I'm not in love with that trigger. Single action only, you would be tempted to think that it's going to be buttery smooth, really light, and it kind of isn't. In fact, what's really crazy is that single action only trigger on the CSX is a higher poundage than the striker on the M&P 2.0. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that once you shoot a couple hundred rounds through the CSX, that trigger gets worn in and significantly lightens up, but I don't really want to break my trigger in. I just want it to be consistent and feel good right out of the box. So not nuts about that. I also would appreciate if Smith & Wesson trusted you enough to take advantage of the manual safety and just give you your 3-pound trigger that you want. I'm sure that it's built that way to kind of offer you some redundancy, but not great. And I don't really want to do an aftermarket trigger in a subcompact carry gun either. So we'll see what happens as we continue to shoot more rounds with it. I guess closing my initial impressions of the CSX is that for a gun that's that small, it is very shootable. I actually enjoyed shooting that quite a bit. Other than, again, that trigger that trigger leaves a lot to be desired, but from a recoil standpoint and tracking the gun under fire, it's really nice.